Hello, my name is Michelle Weaver, and in this video I'll be discussing social responsibility in business ethics. More specifically, we'll be discussing the relationship between social responsibility and business ethics and examining 4 standards for determining if a business is acting ethically. As we're getting started, it's important to define terms. Social responsibility is defined as a business's obligation to maximize its positive impact and minimize its negative impact on society. Business ethics is defined as balancing the goal of profits with the values of individuals and society. Although many people use the terms social responsibility and business ethics interchangeably, they do not mean the same thing. Social responsibility is a broader concept that concerns the impact of the entire business's activities on society. Business ethics, however, concerns an individual's or a work group's decision that society evaluates as right or wrong, ethical or unethical. So from a business ethics perspective, we may be concerned about a healthcare organization overcharging Medicare for medical services. From a social responsibility perspective, we might be concerned about the impact that this overcharging will have on the ability of the healthcare system to provide adequate services for all senior citizens. So now that we've discussed the relationship between social responsibility and business ethics, we're going to drill down a bit more on the concept of business ethics. Ethics generally deals with values relating to the nature of human conduct and values associated with that conduct. Conduct and values in business operations become more complex because individuals are working together with the goal of maximizing profits. The word values comes up a lot in these definitions. The question then becomes, whose values are we talking about? Although many standards can be used to determine whether a business acted ethically or not, we're going to consider 4 standards today. It's important to remember that these 4 standards are not exhaustive. There are other ways to consider whether certain conduct was ethical or unethical, but these 4 standards will give us a good overview of the big issues. The first is positive law, the second is natural law, the third is situational ethics, also sometimes referred to as moral relativism, so I wanted to give you both terms. The fourth is the business stakeholder standard for business ethics. Let's jump into each one in a bit more detail. Positive law is a standard for business ethics, gives us a bright line rule. Positive law states that if an act is legal, it is moral and therefore ethical. Absent illegality, all behavior is ethical under this simple standard. Let's apply this positive law standard to some real-world issues. It is illegal to embezzle money. Bernie Madoff embezzled money. Under the positive law standard, his conduct was therefore unethical. However, consider this. In the 19th century, slavery was legal. According to the positive law standard, slavery at the time was therefore ethical. The natural law standard holds that standards exist universally and cannot be changed or modified by the law. Proponents of natural law maintain that higher standards of behavior than those required by positive law must be followed even if those higher standards run contrary to codified law. Under the natural law standard, a law can be legal but unethical. Returning to our previous example about the 19th century when slavery was legally permissible in the United States, as previously noted, positive law standard would say that slavery was ethical. However, such a deprivation of a person's rights violates the natural law principle of individual freedom and would be unethical under the natural law standard. Unlike the positive law standard, however, natural law is not a bright line rule. Here, there has to be some interpretation of what is considered natural law and by who, and different people will have different standards. The third standard for business ethics that we're going to discuss is situational ethics, otherwise known as moral relativism. This is a flexible standard of ethics that permits an examination of circumstances and motivation before attaching the label of right or wrong, ethical or unethical, to conduct. The classic example of moral relativism is, would it be unethical to steal a loaf of bread to feed a starving child? Under natural law principles, an act can be legal but unethical. According to situational ethics, an act can be illegal but ethical. Consider this example. What if an employee stole money from an employer's petty cash to purchase medicine for a sick child? Would her conduct be unethical? I hope you see how this is quickly becoming a slippery slope. What if she stole the exact same amount of money but to buy tires for her car so she could take her sick child back and forth to the hospital for visits? What if she stole the exact same amount of money but to buy a new hockey uniform for her child? Again, under this standard, there's no argument but that the employee's conduct was illegal. Moral relativism, however, would consider the employee's personal circumstances in determining whether the behavior was ethical. And so you don't think it's so limited to employees. Many of you may be familiar with Google doing business in China. Google and other internet service providers have agreed to do business in China despite the restrictions the Chinese government places on the use of the internet and the content of search engines. Such restrictions in the United States would be an unconstitutional violation of our First Amendment. In China, however, the government control of information is legal. Google and others testified before Congress that some entry, however restricted, was better for the Chinese people than no access at all. Their decision weighed the conflicting values and concluded that they would use the standard of honoring the law of China despite the censorship. I trust now you can see how moral relativism applies to individuals and corporations. The final standard for business ethics that we're going to consider today is the business stakeholder standard. Businesses have different constituencies referred to as stakeholders, often with conflicting goals for the business. Shareholders, for example, may share an economist's view that earnings, hence dividends, should be maximized. Members of the community where a business is located are also stakeholders in the business and have an interest in preserving jobs. The employees of a business are stakeholders and certainly wish to retain their jobs. Consider a downsizing or a reduction in workforce that would offer the shareholders of the company a boost in earnings and share price. At the same time, it would affect the local economy and community in a negative way. Balancing the interests of these stakeholders is a standard used in resolving ethical dilemmas in business. In the gray box, I've included the guidelines for analyzing a contemplated action under the stakeholder standard of behavior to determine whether a course of conduct is ethical or unethical. This type of stakeholder analysis requires the decision maker to review a problem from different perspectives in the light of day. Stakeholder analysis requires measurement of the impact of a decision on various groups, but also requires that public disclosure of that decision is defensible. The questions are helpful and provide insight into a variety of situations and ethical dilemmas. Regarding the stakeholder standard, it's really important to note that this standard is very controversial. Some experts maintain that the shareholders' interest is paramount in resolving the conflicts among stakeholders. Others maintain that a business must assume some responsibility for social issues in their resolution. Let's look at this debate from two perspectives: economist Milton Friedman and CEO Anita Roddick. Economist Friedman argues that a corporate executive's responsibility is to make as much money for the shareholders as possible as long as he operates within the rules of the game. He goes on to say that an executive has the right to promote what he regards as a desirable moral objective only with his own money. In direct opposition to Friedman's views on social responsibility is Anita Roddick. She's CEO of Body Shop International, and she's argued that She doesn't care about earning money because the sole reason for a business to exist is to solve social problems. In between these two views, I hope you can notice that there's a compromise position in which businesses exist primarily to benefit the shareholders, but do take opportunities to solve social problems. Consider the businesses that have created flex time, job sharing, telecommuting work options. These options may be in response to larger social issues surrounding children and their care. They may also serve as a way to retain a quality workforce that's more productive without the worry of poor child care arrangements. The law currently does not require businesses to furnish such options, but the businesses offer the programs voluntarily as a means of addressing social issues. I trust that after watching this video, you have a better understanding of the relationship between social responsibility and business ethics. And next time you hear a business claim that they were acting ethically, I hope you ask yourself, under which standard do they consider their behavior ethical?